Blades of Chaos. If your hero took damage this turn, gain +1 attack and Wind Fury?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
Yeah, let's never speak of that again. Instead, let's talk about some custom legendary weapons inspired from the world of video games. Let's go ahead and jump into this list. Up first here, I have the Portal Gun, a mage legendary weapon, and the Portal Gun was the far and away most common submission this time around from the community. Lots of people made Portal Gun cards. I did not select any of them except this one, and that's because I think this version kept it a lot simpler than the rest. Most cards were summoning actual portals and had all these crazy interactions and lots of text to describe what was happening. Although those were pretty cool and maybe captured the essence of the Portal Gun a little more directly, they didn't really feel like Hearthstone cards to me. They felt way too complex and not like something that Blizzard would print. Whereas this one, I think, still got the aspect of switching things, moving things around, shuffling through a portal, which was cool. But it did it in a simpler way on a single card as opposed to like summoning actual portals and such. So this one reads, after your hero attacks, swap a random friendly minion with a random enemy minion. So you're moving your stuff to their side of the board and their stuff to your side of the board. Clearly that can be powerful. Taking a Wisp on your side and swapping it with a Lich King, that could be amazing. But do keep in mind that you have to have small stuff in your deck in order to make that good. So you can't just be, you can't play this when you have a Lich King on board. Suddenly it's a lot worse. So there are some restrictions for when this is going to work well. Also a card that's pretty awkward to play on turn 4 because you're unlikely to want to swap anything that early in the game. So not a great tempo play. So what that means is the decks that would be best for this are decks that run lots of small minions, but those decks may not really want a tool like this because they might be more aggressive and then they don't have a good 4-mana play and it's kind of awkward for them. Control decks would much more like to use this effect, but control decks might not have enough small stuff. So there is sort of a natural check and balance to the power level of this card, I think, just based on the archetypes and the mana cost that keeps it from being crazy overpowered. And that's still good because it can be a tech card of sorts for things like Big Priest or Resurrect Priest decks, where you give them something small that they don't want to resurrect. And that's a cool little asset to have in the game. And it is a legendary weapon too, remember, so it's not like the consistency of the draw is going to be there all the time for a card like this. So I do think it's strong, but still within reason and still kept in check. Like, it's not going to be completely overpowered. So this is the only Portal Gun card I selected. Again, lots of good ones. A little bit too complex, but I thought this one found a nice balance. Moving on here, I have Sora's Ultima weapon from Kingdom Hearts. It's an 8-mana 8/1 for Paladin from Nat 1989, and it reads, while equipped, increase your maximum mana crystals by 2. And you might be thinking, well, for an 8-mana card, that doesn't sound very exciting the turn you play it. The maximum mana crystals go, but you don't have the mana. But I think based on the wording of this card, and I'm just going to make an assumption here that's going to trigger some people, I think this means if you play it when you have 10 mana, you go up to 12 maximum mana. And if you keep Sora's Ultimate Weapon equipped, the next turn you have 12 mana to operate with. And some people will say, Regis, that breaks the game, blah, blah, blah. It may be based on what we understand now, but the great thing about people who make games is they can change the rules of the game. And we've had the rules of Hearthstone changed many times in the past to fit card mechanics. I think you could do it here too. So suddenly you give the Paladin 12 mana to work with, but only if they don't attack with Sora's Ultimate Weapon, and only if it doesn't get removed by some sort of weapon removal tech. So it's a very high opportunity thing, but a lot of risk is bundled in as well. So I think that helps keep this card from being ridiculously overpowered. And then again, even 12 mana in a turn is often not crazy good. If you keep it for multiple turns after turn after turn, it's going to add up after a while. But we've seen Druids utilize 12 mana in the past with Innervates and such. They can do some cool things, but nothing super crazy. And I think Paladin has even less opportunity to do crazy things than other classes. So I just like that this creates a really high risk reward scenario, and it's very susceptible. Sometimes it could just be an 8 damage hit, by the way. We've seen that with like Gorehowl in the past, where it's just good to hit for 8 damage for 8 mana, that kind of mini Pyroblast. So that gives it some like extra utility in a pinch for burst damage, but most of the time it's going to be about setting up some other cool thing. And I think that's cool that it's working to set up some cool thing personally. So I would like to see a card like this that breaks the rules a little bit. Up next here, I have a card from Synth and Lasers. It's the BFG 9000, a 9-mana 4/3 warrior weapon. And it's a pretty crazy one. It reads, after attacking, deal this weapon's damage to all characters, including the initial target. There were actually a couple versions submitted of the BFG that were very similar in wording and had the same sort of effect because it's a weapon that just hits everything. So it makes sense that a lot of people found that line. But I thought the other ones were way too overpowered. They had higher attack values and lower mana costs. This was the one that got a cool effect going, but kept the mana cost and attack value, I think, within reason, even though this is still a really, really good card. Because we've seen in the past with things like Scourgelord Garrosh, right? The weapon that comes with Scourgelord Garrosh, it's a 4 damage weapon. It attacks 3 things next to each other, minions on the board. And that's a very powerful card. It's really, really good. Just for the weapon alone, often Scourgelord Garrosh has made it into decks. Not so good that it's played all the time, but clearly the weapon aspect is wonderful. And the BFG 9000 basically takes that to an entirely new level, right? Because you can attack face and still flame strike the board. Now, noteworthy, of course, is that you're going to be damaging your own minions and your own face, so it's not always super easy to pull this off, but when you do get this equipped and you're able to attack a couple turns in a row, your opponent's going to have a nightmare of a time actually keeping up. They're going to have to play really high health stuff in order to survive the onslaught of the BFG 9000. It also just does a lot of face damage, by the way, right? This is 8 damage 3 turns in a row, so that's 24 damage output to the face while also killing your opponent's board. I recognize how crazy strong that sounds, because it is, but keep in mind there are some ways to control this, right, and keep it in check. There's weapon removal that's always around. If a card like this ever dominated the meta, weapon removal would come out. A lot of decks just wouldn't really care that much about that much damage because of how much armor they were generating. And of course, if you're pressuring a warrior enough when they play a card like this, they're just going to die to the damage too, and they're going to wipe out their own board. So the upsides are there, but there are some pretty clear downsides as well. Do I think this card would be good? Yes. Do I think this card's overpowered? Maybe a little bit. Maybe it could just be 3 damage, right? But Synth and Lasers, I thought, captured the idea the best and kept it the closest to being balanced out of all the submissions other than it. So to me, I think this one's a pretty cool one and captures a really iconic gaming weapon to me. And I guess we'd have to see how overpowered it feels, but I think it actually is okay. Moving on here, we have a card from Bahab the Warrior. It's Scorpion's Kunai, a 3 mana 3/3 for Rogue. It reads, Battlecry, your opponent summons a random minion from their hand, deal 2 damage to that minion. So we have kind of a dirty rat in a weapon here, which is perfect for Scorpion because he always throws out that thing and says, get over here, and pulls his dudes towards him. So it's exactly what the weapon in the Mortal Kombat series is all about. And I love that it captures that so perfectly. And we know that like hand disruption is something we want and need in Hearthstone. I miss Dirty Rat, and I think Scorpion's Kunai here gets that Dirty Rat vibe. It is unfortunate that this would be a class card, but you know, if there are a couple different class cards that provide this utility, that can still help settle out and balance the meta, even if one particular deck maybe doesn't have that disruption. If there's enough out there, then certain kinds of decks might have more trouble existing. So just this existing would be great. It would help contribute to some of that disruption. The only thing that I don't like about this card, which I think is great, by the way, but the only thing I don't like is that I think it should just read deal 3 damage to that minion to keep it consistent instead of 2. That just feels more organic to me because it's clearly a 3 damage weapon. Now, some people might say, whoa, Regis, this is way too good, man. It's a 3 mana 3/3. That's already above stat for a 3 cost weapon. That's way better than Fire War Axe. But remember, you can pull out giant stuff from your opponent's hand. You can pull out like Lich King, and you don't have an answer to it, right? You're only doing 5 damage to Lich King, and on turn 3, that's a big problem, right? So there are risks, much like with Dirty Rat, that means this has to be a little bit overstated, right? It has to be better than its cost would imply. Even though disruption's good, sometimes it still backfires and fails super hard. So there is a necessity there to up the stats a little bit, and that is done here well. So I think this card feels really balanced, and it's exactly the sort of thing we need in Hearthstone, and perfectly captures the essence of the character Scorpion and his weapons. So all around well done. Up next here, I have another rogue weapon, this time from Zoe. It's the Hidden Blade from Assassin's Creed, 2 mana 2/2, and it reads, your opponent sees this as a rogue secret. After hero attacks, reveal this. I think that's a super cool idea. It's like a secrets on secrets on secrets. I heard you like secrets. So for me, it really makes two things better, right? It makes this weapon interesting because it creates a lot of friction and maybe awkward moments, and your opponent plays around things that don't exist. That's cool. But it also probably makes rogue secrets a little bit more interesting too, right? Because is it really a secret? Is it a weapon? If nobody's playing secrets, it's going to be pretty obvious when it's the hidden blade, right? But if there are secret decks, then the hidden blade becomes more powerful. So I don't know, it just feeds into this rogue secret thing that we've only ever seen a little bit of. They haven't been played as a set. It's pretty much always evasion. There have been some of the one that adds it back to hand, cheat death, I think it's called. But a card like this would be really cool. And of course, it's important that it's 2 mana. Noteworthy that a 2 mana 2/2 weapon's actually not that bad on its own right. That's better than playing the hero power on turn 2. So even if the secret aspect doesn't create any friction or problems for your opponent, if it doesn't disrupt them in any way, the weapon itself could still be a fine play. We see that with Odd Rogue. So, you know, if you want to build on a weapon with deadly poisons or weapon buff pirates, this would be a good base card to do that. So it offers two kind of lines of functionality here. Sneaky secret stuff, good base weapon. So all around, I think this card is neat. And it also, of course, fits the assassin, hidden assassin, stealthy style of Assassin's Creed. So pretty cool little card. Moving on here, I have the Pokeball from Poodle Fez. And a lot of people went the Pokemon route. And again, this was the one I thought captured it the best and most simply of everybody else. Some were just crazy overpowered. We were summoning minions every turn. Some just felt weird from stat standpoints. But I thought this one got the essence of it, kept it clean and easy like a Hearthstone card would. It's a 4 mana 4/1 for Hunter. It reads Overkill. Summon a copy of the minion your hero attacked. So, you know, if you do enough damage, you're capturing the Pokemon in your Pokeball, and then you're going to be resummoning it, much like in Pokemon. So pretty simple card, but potentially a powerful one, right? You could capture some pretty big stuff and resummon it. And then it would be like this 4 mana mind control that seems really good. But keep in mind, because it's an overkill, you have to damage whatever thing you're trying to summon down to 3 or less health in order to summon it. So, you know, if it's a Ysera, you've got some work to do before you're going to steal that Ysera. But there's a card like Hunter's Mark that exists. So Hunter's Mark plus Pokeball suddenly becomes a 2-card 6 mana mind control in the late game. And that's pretty cool. But also keep in mind, Pokeball is kind of useless otherwise, right? Like it's really hard to use, not necessarily great on turn 4. Could be okay, right? To swing the board kind of like a flanking strike in a way, right? If you kill a 3/3, it's basically a flanking strike. But probably the kind of thing you're going to want to wait for late game to get some real value out of if you want it to be amazing. And if you're running a legendary weapon like this, you probably want it to be amazing. Interestingly, you know, if you played this and you followed it up with like a Captain Greenskin, you could get a couple charges out of it because of the extra durability. That might be a cool play that offers extra value. But again, a little slow, a little greedier, so it may not always work. But regardless, I think this has a couple interesting interactions with Hunter. It gives them a potential control tool. So this is certainly something I wouldn't mind seeing in the game at all. Up next here, I have a card from Black Magic 4801. It's the Master Sword for Paladin. 5 mana 5/1, and it reads, whenever your hero is healed, gain +1 durability. I love the simplicity of this card. It's a heal synergy card for Paladin. It's worse than Arcanite Reaper at its base, but it can be much, much better if you're healing yourself often. And you might need to heal yourself often if you're using a card like this to remove your opponent's stuff. So it's kind of feeding into itself, which I think is really cool. It becomes this go-to weapon. Now, the only real downsides to a card like this is that you have to have enough healing to keep it going. So sometimes you might be stuck without the ability to attack and your weapon's kind of dead, or you just have to attack anyway because you're desperate. Also, Paladin does have other cards that give you good weapons. Things like Uther of the Ebon Blade, Tyrian Forge Ring, although, you know, Uther might be rotating out before too long. Still, those are considerations. Like, you can't run True Silver Champion and Master Sword necessarily. They might really conflict with one another, particularly if Master Sword is staying equipped for a long time because you're giving it extra durability. That's an important thing to note. So this is another card that, although it has a lot of potential, it's not always going to be easy to extract that potential, and you have to build and play a specific way. And I think that's what makes this balanced instead of overpowered. But I still think it walks a really fine line in a cool spot. And I'd love to see Heal Paladin get some more support with a card like this. For our next card here, we have one from Mr. Guides. These are the Hellfire Shotguns for Warlock. 6 mana 3/3 weapon that reads, whenever your hero attacks, add a Soul Orb to your hand. Soul Orbs are 0 mana, restore 3 health spells. So we have a neat little card here that not only captures Reaper from Overwatch really, really nicely, but I think fits in with some of the things Warlock likes to do as well. For instance, this could be the top end kind of damage piece in a heal zoo deck, because you might not mind having some of these 0 mana heals to play, discounted Happy Ghouls or buff your Light Warden or whatever it might be. That could fit in well. This could even be a control deck tool, right? Where you just need to kill a 3 health minion and gain a little bit of life along the way. And this gives you that asset over multiple turns. That works too. You could even run this in maybe like a weird, miracle warlock deck, because you're getting 0 mana spells and those might be really good to cycle with. So I think, there's some expected ways to utilize this, maybe some crazy new ways, but all in all, it's just a simple and elegant design that tends to fit things that Warlock likes to do. So for me, it works. Up next here, we have a card from Terminator 468. This is Thunderfury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, as some might know it, and it's based on Warcraft, which is fine because Warcraft is a video game. So probably the most fitting of all Hearthstone cards in this video. This version of Thunderfury is a 7 mana 3/4. It has Wind Fury, as you might expect, and it reads, after your hero attacks, deal 1 to 2 damage to all minions. First things first, I think this really captures Thunderfury from World of Warcraft really nicely. That had a proc that would like shoot out some lightning and stuff. And this does that too, right? After you attack, it's going to send out essentially a beakered lightning or a lightning storm that's going to damage all minions on the board, including your own. So this can be a really powerful swing and removal tool right off the bat, right? If you attack twice with this thing, you're going to do 2 to 4 damage to the board. So it's somewhere between that, Blizzard and Flame Strike range for 7 mana, while also dealing 6 damage. And that sounds really, really strong. I get it. But keep in mind, there are some problems for a card like this. Things like taunt minions, for instance. A Lich King alone could completely break Thunderfury because you have to take 16 damage to attack it twice. So there are those occasional things that keep a card like this in check. And it does only have 4 charges. So it's really just 2 turns that you're going to get to utilize the full Wind Furied power of the Thunderfury here. It's not like Doomhammer that has 8 charges, right? So you've got to be careful. Like maybe right now I just want to do 1 to 2 damage, and then the next turn I want to do 2 to 4 damage, and then the following turn I want to do 1 to 2. So you kind of have to like measure out when you want your attacks to hit and how powerful that's going to be. You also have to note that you're probably not going to be able to build much of a board yourself because you're going to be damaging your own things. So there are some challenges to using a card like this. Your opponent also knows it's there, so they might just be able to play really high health stuff or that taunt to deny it. Weapon removal is always an aspect of a card like this too, because it's one you're going to be looking to use over multiple turns, not all at once. So to me, although this is, again, a pretty strong card and would be one of the better cards in the game, I think, not crazy overpowered. I think it's still within the realm of possibility to see a card like this printed. So for me, I think it captures the Thunderfury nicely. And then finally, one last card here. You knew I wasn't going to make it through a custom card video without some sort of discard Warlock synergy card. This one coming from Mage Old as Dirt. The Junk Jet from Fallout, a 4 mana 1/3 weapon for Warlock. It reads, whenever your hero attacks, discard a random card and gain attack equal to its cost this turn. So you discard a 4 mana card, you gain 4 attack, and then you have a 5/3 weapon, right? Now keep in mind, this reads whenever your hero attacks, not after. So that attack would apply for the attack that you're making, right? It's not like it's lost or wasted. So your hero kind of rises up, it discards something, it gains the attack, and then it resolves the attack, which is kind of cool. That's a discard. That's nice because you like to discard things in a discard Warlock deck. But keep in mind, there's a lot of unreliability there. So if you're trying to kill, say, like a 4 health minion, you don't know what you're going to discard. You might discard a 1 mana card that doesn't get you to 4 attack. You might discard a 7 mana card that means you could have killed a bigger thing if you'd aimed for a higher target. So there's all these really interesting calculations about figuring out what's the best thing to attack. Often you're probably going to end up just attacking face because you just have no idea, which is cool. But I just like the fact that there's 3 discards bundled into this card right off the bat. That can be really cool for a discard deck. It does some things that we've seen in Warlock before, like adjusting the attack value of things. That is a Warlock mechanic that we've seen. So to me, it feels like a really good, true Warlock card. I like the strategic implications of it. I like the synergies for it in a discard deck. I think it would make discard decks way better. You could even do some crazy stuff, right? Like discard a 10 mana card guaranteed, and then just hit your opponent for 11 3 times, right? Like that's a 30 damage card with the Junk Jet. So all around, whether you use it for consistency, use it for some ridiculous combo, to me, I think it's a really neat design. So I love the Junk Jet here from Mage Old as Dirt, the perfect discard Warlock card to cap off this video. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this custom card video. To be honest, the cards this time felt like people struggled a little more than normal. It was a little harder for me too to like really narrow down to the best cards. I don't know if the designs were quite as strong. Maybe that was something about just not feeling inspired by the theme, or just hard to translate some of these things into Hearthstone. I'm not sure. But it was a little bit tougher, maybe for all of us this time around. That said, I got a new topic next time. We're going back to Hearthstone roots, but I want to see some cards based on the Titans from Warcraft lore. If you don't know what the Titans from Warcraft lore are, you're going to have to look that up. But Sargeras and Aman'Thul, and there's a handful more. They don't have to be minions necessarily. They could be spells based on something the Titans did, or like Sargeras' weapon, or whatever. It just has to be Titan themed in one way or another. It could be a quest for Sargeras to destroy the world. Whatever, I don't care. Just make it Titan themed. There's a link in the description below for more details and the submission form for that for next time. But until then, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game on.